It wasn't even meant for me to hear. I wasn't supposed to be in the hallway outside the guest room that afternoon. I was just trying to find my phone charger, which I'd somehow left behind during the rush to get to brunch. But I stopped when I heard the laughter, the kind that dances with cruelty when people think they're safe behind closed doors. Please, her sister sneered between sips of wine. He's just a paycheck. A walking wallet in a button-up. Laughter followed. Hers. My wife's. That laugh, I'll never forget it. Not just because of what it meant, but because I could hear how comfortable she was with the lie. Like it was nothing. Like I wasn't upstairs finalizing payroll for the small business I'd built from scratch, the same business that had paid for her graduate degree, her car, their apartment downtown. Don't be so harsh, she said, her voice laced with a kind of mock defense. He's useful. Useful. That word echoed in me like a slap. A backhand across my chest. It was sharp, cold, and humiliating. I didn't move. Just stood there, hand gripping the doorknob to the linen closet, afraid that if I turned it, they'd know I'd heard. But maybe they needed to. I didn't confront her that night, or the night after that. Instead, I paid for their Uber to some rooftop cocktail bar, smiled as they left, and returned to the quiet of our apartment. And in that silence, something inside me shifted, not rage, not bitterness, just a hollowing out, a realization. They weren't wrong. I was the guy who paid for everything. I paid for the dinners when her card accidentally declined, paid for the rent when her sister hit a rough patch and needed a place to crash for just a few weeks, paid for the new rugs, the spa days, the bachelorette trip to Tulum. And all the while, I thought I was building a life. I thought I was supporting my wife and her family out of love. But what I had really been doing was financing my own invisibility. That night, I sat in the dark at the kitchen island, staring at the bank app on my phone. There was no anger, just an eerie calm. I started making a list. Every account with my name on it, every joint card, every automatic payment tied to our apartment. By morning, I had a plan. The next week, I played my part. I booked reservations for her birthday dinner, sent flowers to her office, laughed when her sister made snide jokes about men who think buying flowers means they're romantic. I was charming. I was warm. I was everything they thought I'd never stop being. And quietly, behind the scenes, I made every necessary move. I called my lawyer, Harper, the only one I trusted. I explained what I'd overheard. She didn't say much, just listened, and then said something I'll never forget. You're not broken. You're just finally seeing things clearly. Let's move. I closed the business credit cards first. It took 5 minutes. Just a few clicks and some uncomfortable confirmation screens. Then I canceled the rent payment on their apartment, technically in my name, though she never liked to admit that. Next, I created a new account, moved my savings, transferred the emergency fund I'd built over the years. I even switched my direct deposit from the company account. Within 48 hours, she wouldn't be able to access $1. The last thing I did was leave a note. Just one line, folded and left on the counter beneath her espresso machine. Let him pay for it now. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. I left while she was at brunch again. Another girl's only affair full of fake lashes and filtered Instagram stories. I packed a duffel bag, just enough clothes for a few weeks. Grabbed my laptop, my watch, the old photo of my parents on their wedding day. And then I walked out, locked the door behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. The text messages started that evening. First one. Babe, did you change the rent payment info? The landlord's saying we're late. Then another. The Amex declined at dinner. Weird, right? Followed by, why aren't you answering me? I turned my phone off. Sat in a small Airbnb outside the city, drank black coffee in silence, and watched the sun dip below the hills. It was the first peaceful moment I'd felt in months. Maybe years. The next morning, Harper called. You ready? She asked. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. There's a kind of clarity that only comes after betrayal. It's not loud. It doesn't burst through the door like rage. It arrives quietly, with a kind of sobering grace. And I saw everything now. How I'd let myself be used. How I'd mistaken usefulness for love. How I'd been more of a bank than a partner. The thing is, I didn't blame them, not entirely. I'd made it easy. I'd wanted to be needed so badly that I handed over pieces of myself without asking for anything in return. But the moment I heard her sister's voice, that part of me died. And what replaced it was not bitterness. It was resolve. I would walk away, and they would never again mistake my silence for weakness. 3 days passed before I heard her voice. Not through a phone call. Those I ignored, but in a voicemail, left sometime after midnight. Her voice cracked like she'd been crying, like the reality of my absence was finally sinking in. Where are you? Why are you doing this? I I didn't mean it like that, okay? It was just a stupid joke. Please, can we talk? But it wasn't just a joke. And even if it was, jokes reveal what people truly think when they're not trying to be careful. That wasn't a slip. That was the truth with a smile on its face. She didn't know I'd already spoken to the landlord, who confirmed the lease transfer was complete and she now held full responsibility. She didn't know the car in the garage, leased under my business, was due for repossession within the week. And she definitely didn't know the family friend who'd helped her land her current gig was also the investor I had coffee with yesterday, the one who now knew exactly how she talked about her useless husband in private. The world was starting to echo back the same hollowness she'd created. I'd expected rage, maybe threats, but what I got was confusion, panic. She'd never imagined I would actually leave. Because I wasn't supposed to. I was supposed to swallow my pride like I always did, pay the bill, fix the mess, absorb the insult with a tight smile and a credit card. But I'd reached the edge, the point where love doesn't soften the blow anymore. It just makes it land deeper. She showed up at my old office 2 days later. I watched from the security camera feed in the lobby as she tried to walk in like nothing had changed. But her key card didn't work. I'd already made sure of that. The receptionist gave her a polite smile, picked up the phone, and then gently informed her that the owner was not available. Ever again. That night, another voicemail. I don't understand what you're doing. You're being cruel. I mean, God, it was my sister. She jokes like that with everyone. Why would you take it seriously? It was the way she kept deflecting. Like my pain was a misinterpretation. Like I'd made the mistake by being wounded. There was no apology. Just defense. Just denial. And that was all I needed to hear. I moved into a small condo outside the city. Nothing fancy, but it had everything I needed. A fireplace. A big window that faced east. And most importantly, silence. No one there to question where I'd been, or mock my work ethic, or imply that money could replace connection. I didn't rush to date. Didn't bury myself in distractions. I sat with it. Let it ache. Let it teach me. Because I'd realized something. I didn't leave because I stopped loving her. I left because I finally loved myself enough to stop bleeding for someone who kept handing me knives. The apartment was quiet at night. No more reality shows blaring. No sister gossiping from the couch. No passive-aggressive comments about how real men don't work past 6 p.m. I missed the old version of her sometimes. The woman I met when she was still dreaming, still soft around the edges, before she started measuring everything, including me, by how expensive it was. But I didn't miss what she'd become. One day, about 2 weeks after I left, her sister called me directly. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail, curious. She didn't disappoint. You're pathetic, her voice hissed. Do you know what you've done to her? She's falling apart. She's not eating. She's crying all the time. You ruined her. I listened in silence. She ended it with, but don't worry. She'll bounce back. She doesn't need your stupid money anyway. I smiled. There it was. The truth, stripped bare. They never saw me as a person. Just a resource. A utility. They thought I'd be easy to replace. It took a few more weeks for the truth to ripple through her world. I heard through mutual friends, ones who still respected me enough to be honest, that she was struggling, that her credit was frozen, that her sister had moved out and in with a new boyfriend, leaving her to cover rent alone, that she was asking around, trying to figure out what happened to the business accounts she thought she had access to. And it was in that unraveling that I realized. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't owe her a final word, a dramatic confrontation, or a drawn-out postmortem. My absence was the explanation. One afternoon, about a month after I walked out, I got an email from her. The subject line was just, please. I didn't open it. I archived it. Whatever she wrote, I already knew what it would say. Regret, confusion, maybe nostalgia, but not accountability. And I wasn't here for anything less than truth. I started therapy. I wanted to understand how I ended up in a relationship where I let someone chip away at me one laugh at a time, where I let being needed matter more than being respected. My therapist said something that stuck with me. You thought your value was in what you gave, but your worth isn't a bank balance. It's a boundary. That hit me hard. I'd never set a boundary in that marriage. Not once. And it had cost me pieces of myself I didn't even realize I was giving away. But I was rebuilding now. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. The day the final paperwork was filed, bank accounts separated, names off the lease, everything signed and notarized, I sat alone in a coffee shop with a cup of dark roast and the window fogged from the inside. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't relief either. It was stillness. The kind that comes after a long storm. When the air is so quiet you can finally hear your own breath. I didn't regret loving her. But I would never again confuse love with servitude. I never meant for any of it to be revenge. That's what people don't get. They hear the story, hear how I left, how I shut off the financial tap, how I disappeared like a ghost with a plan, and they assume I did it to hurt her. To prove a point. To show them. But the truth is, I didn't leave to punish her. I left to save myself. I ran into her one afternoon, about 8 months after I walked out. It was at a bookstore downtown, one of those small, dusty shops with creaky floors and mismatched chairs in the corner. I was flipping through a worn copy of The War of Art when I felt the weight of a stare. I looked up, and there she was, standing 2 aisles over in a blazer too big for her shoulders, eyes rimmed with something between fatigue and disbelief. She opened her mouth to say something, but all that came out was, "Hey." I nodded. "Hey." It was the first time I'd seen her since the day I left. No lawyers. No filters. Just her. Human. Hollowed out in ways I recognized. She stepped closer. "You look good." "Thanks." There was a long pause. That kind of silence that holds 1,000 unsaid things. Then, softly. I didn't know how to fix it. She wasn't talking about the finances. "I know," I said. "I thought you'd come back," she whispered. "I know that too." She blinked fast, like she was about to cry, but didn't. "You were never just a paycheck. I just didn't know how to love you." I didn't respond. What could I say? I'd heard the words behind the door. I'd lived the slow drip of subtle disrespect, the paper cuts that never quite healed. She asked if I wanted to get coffee. I said no. And I meant it, not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing left to give her. No more explanations. No more space in my heart for her apologies. I had mourned our marriage, buried the future we were supposed to build. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And that was the hardest lesson of all. That peace doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it just arrives on its own, quiet and unceremonious. Over the next year, I built something new. A life. It started small. Early mornings at the gym, black coffee, journaling. I started writing again. Took a job consulting for a nonprofit. I taught myself how to cook more than eggs and pasta. I met people who didn't see me as what I could give, but as who I was. I learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. And somewhere along the way, I found forgiveness. Not for her, not at first, but for myself. For letting it go on as long as it did. For needing to be needed more than I needed to be respected. I never told anyone the full story. Not my friends, not even my family. I didn't want it to be gossip. I didn't want pity. But when people asked what happened, I'd just say, "She thought I was a paycheck." So I showed her how fast a man like me could walk away. Simple. True. No drama. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to explode or lash out. It's to disappear. To pull your presence from the places where you were never truly seen. A year and a half later, I met someone. Different energy entirely. She didn't care about how much I made. She asked about the books I loved. She made me laugh. Often, without cruelty. She saw value in me before I offered a thing. I was cautious. I told her my history in pieces. She listened. Didn't flinch. She said something I'll never forget. "You don't owe anyone proof that you're enough." And I believed her. Sometimes, I think about that moment outside the guest room. That careless laugh. That throwaway comment that changed everything. And now, it doesn't hurt. Not anymore. Because it led me here. To a life where I am no longer performing. No longer providing just to be tolerated. No longer mistaking acceptance for love. I am not a paycheck. I am a person. And if someone can't see the difference, they don't deserve either.